Hello, I'm Daniela, and welcome to Stitch With Me in 2024, the September prompt. Now, anyone new to the channel, you can access all of the videos in the workshop, and I have them all linked below. But for those of you coming back for the prompt, let's get started right away. The prompt for September is lair. This one is so exciting because I always think of a lair as like a villain's lair. So there's a way to illustrate that. But a lair is a resting spot or a den of a wild animal. And from there you can extrapolate it further. There are other definitions of lair, so if you're curious about something else, take a look in the dictionary for that. But I can't wait to show you what I created for lair.
So here is a little bit of my snippet roll with the previous prompts, and I had to attach more fabric to continue with this. And that's what makes this project so interesting, is you can continue it. I can continue this for years if I wanted. So today's prompt, I've already taken my stamps and stamped on lair, the prompt to use here. And specifically, I'm going to make a nest. So I like to gather my components. I have a bunch of orts, the little threadlings as I call them, just leftover thread from my projects, and I sorted them to get kind of nest colors. I really like that. And I have some scraps of fabric in the colors and the patterns that I've used, because I like to do a collage on the background. And then I have some interesting trims that I think will make a very beautiful nest, as well as some lace scraps, so I can really play around with it. I think this prompt is going to take me design time more than anything else. So I have some of this fabric that is really busy, but I thought it would make a nice collage background. So I'll just clip off some of the recognizable features, like the bunny, and I just have something interesting to use as my background. Can fix that up too. My other goal is I want to hide this seam as much as I can. I have this lace, as well as this, and I think that adds just beautiful texture. And then I have some of this background. I'll start with the nest with these, and I want to make eggs, and I just think this is a beautiful color for maybe robin's eggs or something in my lair, the nest, and playing around with it here. So I'll just kind of play around, speed this along to show you what I'm thinking about doing, because it does take a little while to come to that point. I just happen to love the texture on the end of this fabric, so I'll play around with that as well. It's always something unexpected that adds a lot of interest to the piece. Unique features. So maybe I'll turn this upside down just to get the pattern. And then I can build my nest here and maybe do that, or I think I'll put that here. So now to build the nest, I want to take this as my background piece. It's a piece of fabric that I've used in the past. It has just a little bit of interfacing to make it a little more substantial. And I want to clip that into my nest shape and build up from there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it gives me an idea of what I want to do. I think I'll actually cut it here, and that gives me even more options. Since I'm just using this as a base, I can really play around with it. This will all be covered up with all this texture. And I want to add some lace as well. I love the curve of this lace. So I'm just getting some interesting shapes. Then I can add the orts here. Again, I'll kind of fashion that into an oval and set that down. You can see that the nest is coming along. Just keep continuing to play with it. And then I can incorporate some of these pieces in. So this is coming out really well. I'm going to start by stitching this down and these parts down, and then I can build up that nest. So I have it all sewn down. I have large textured stitches. And now I want to start building up the nest. I'm going to start by cutting out the little eggs, and that way it gives me an idea of the size and where I want to put them. So yeah, maybe this size will be for one in the background, and then I'll have maybe 2 more eggs. So I'll just cut these into ovals, egg shapes really. So roughly that's kind of how I'll do it. But I'm not going to attach these down yet. I want to put the nest around first. So I'll set these aside. And now I want to build up my nest. I have the threadlings here. I'll just play around to get the shape. Because they're so delicate, I want to add some other things too. Kind of just play around, and then I can just continue to tuck it as I go. Make it look nest-like. I also have some other trim. Maybe I'll put little pieces of that just with a couching stitch. So maybe I'll start with that. Put a little piece of that here and there. Maybe on one side, on the bottom here, and the top. Can work a little bit of this thread in there at the same time. And again, my stitches will tack this down so it won't be so unruly. But then on the lace, there's some little trim here that I thought added an interesting texture. I already cut this piece off, so I can use that. Again, just trimming it down to manageable sizes. And then this piece is nice and long, so I'll cut this out. I love the texture of the lace here. Maybe I'll cut this into 3 pieces. Like that. So I'll tack that down, and then I can come back and add my additional elements to the nest. I'm just going to stitch that down just with little stitches here and there. I want a little of dimension, and I want bold stitches. So I have 6 strands of floss to use to really hold it down. This will add more texture, and I can make big chunky stitches. And I'm going to weave all the colors that I've used in my piece right through that nest, and even a little green. So I've stitched the first layer to my nest down. You can see these big chunky stitches. I have a bunch of the little thread going across. So the next stage I want to add are my little eggs here. So I'll find the placement for those and stitch them down. And then I want to add my final layer just to really make it look like a nest. So I'll stitch these down with just a tiny stitch and a single thread of a matching color floss. And then we can get back to finishing that beautiful nest. So I've stitched the eggs down in the nest. You can see it's really starting to take shape. Before I add more of this nest material, though, I want to speckle the eggs. So I have just a colored pencil, a little darker than the existing color blue, and a brown. Light umber and non-photo blue, if anyone's interested specifically. I'm just going to make some little speckles here, just randomly, some parts of the egg. And I'll do that for each one. Some areas I'll go back in, make it a little darker. Then I'll take that blue, just add a few here and there. I think it just gives it a little more realistic look to it. And while I have that brown out, I'll just gently create a little shadow behind some of those eggs. So now I can finish off this nest. My goal is to make it so you don't see the bottom of these eggs. So I might have to come up with additional scraps of thread to do that. I also have a little bit of this beautiful ribbon, which I think I want to use some. So I'll cut that out and then figure out how to add this in, incorporate this in. Maybe just something as simple as this. I'll take some thread and with big stitches work that in. It's just a couching stitch going over the pieces. Just holds that ribbon in place. Not trying to hold it too tight or trying to make it too evenly spaced with the stitches, but I'll come back in with another color and add that also to my nest here. I want to get the right angle. So I've anchored that part in place. Now I just want to add stuff. I have some of this thread here and I want to focus on the front of it. Maybe I'll add a few stitches in the back to tie it in, but I'm really looking just to add dimension and a little bit of color. So I'll play with this and then tack it down with some stitches. And there we have the makings of a nest. I'll do some stitching to hold it in place. I can even pull up some of this little lace and cut up the pieces. And when I do my stitching, I'll just tack it down. And it gives even a little more dimension. It makes that nest even more tangled and interesting looking. So I'll stitch those pieces down. Maybe one more piece over here. And we'll come back and make any finishing touches that we need. So I've completed the nest. I love how it looks. There's so much texture. Can't really see it from the side, but there is quite a bit of weight and strength to that little nest. So now I want to add in my tag for the prompt, but I also wanted to play around with maybe adding just some lace going through, just to combine the two pages. Maybe I'll even have it going like that. So I'll just tack that down with some stitches and then tack that down. We'll take a look at our finished piece. So I stitched this down and I have a little bit of runoff here, but I kind of like that. I'll leave that for now. I stitched down the prompt and I added just a few little stitches in there, and I'm really loving this one. So that's my layer prompt. Because it's September, we only have a few months left. I have to start giving some consideration to how I'm going to mount this, whether I'm going to use some type of piece on the end or how I'm going to make the snippet roll work. So maybe some fabric. So I've got to start thinking about that. And then I want to go back at the very end and add a few little stitches here and there to tie it all together, and then add a backing. So these are things I've got to start thinking about because we're getting to the end of the year. Thanks for sharing your work on the Facebook page. I love seeing your prompts and what you've created. It's just beautiful and a great community. I want to thank you for that.
So that's my prompt for layer. I loved creating that nest, adding those eggs, adding some shading with colored pencils. It was a really enjoyable exercise. This whole snippet roll has become very fun and enjoyable. In the future, I'll have the remaining videos for the year, as well as how I'm going to finally assemble that snippet roll, so stay tuned. I can't wait to see your work on the Facebook page. So many of you have volunteered your beautiful artwork. I love to see the prompts, and I try and comment on every one of them. I think it's so great that we have a community where we can share our artwork together. Thanks for joining me today. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe.